There's been a lot of media hysteria, some ambiguous and some negative polls. We've talked about that before, that they seem to be not so disinterested as we might imagine. It's in line with previous prejudicial polls. But here's the main course of action that we're all looking at. It's 100 days, and we're right in the middle of everything, and yet people are already talking about Donald Trump as if he's failed or there's an obituary. Nothing could be further from the truth. Don't listen to the libertarian right or the never Trump right or the hard left. What's happening is we're watching the most dramatic counter-revolution in our history. This is more fundamentally changing than even the Reagan revolution that rebooted the American economy and won the Cold War. And it's even more, I don't know, more fundamentally transformative than the Roosevelt first 100 days when he took the country hard left with the New Deal. And what do I mean by that? Everything is in play and we have no idea how it's going to happen. It's going to turn out or what will happen. But it could be what Donald Trump called a golden age. Let's look at foreign policy very quickly. Iran is not the Iran of 2015-16 when Obama did the deal. It's not even the Iran that we got out of the deal under Trump's first administration. This is Iran that has no air defenses to speak of. Anytime the United States or Israel wants to penetrate the air shield of Iran, it can. There is no Hezbollah as we knew it. There is no Hamas as we knew it. The Houthis have been completely neutered. We spent $1 billion, but Trump hit them with almost everything we've had. The Red Sea is opening up to navigation. And so my point is that if Donald Trump wants to cut a deal, it will be on terms that get rid of the nuclear program. And if they do not want to get rid of the nuclear program, they have no more surrogates. There's no Mr. Assad in Syria. And these other terrorist appendages that I just said are defunct. So he'll either get a nuclear deal, or he'll either outsource to Israel, or we will take out that nuclear threat that Iran may possess. So there's going to be one way or another a solution to the Iran problem. In Ukraine, we're beyond give them whatever it takes, the Joe Biden strategy of, it's a non-strategy, just feed that Stalingrad carnage house. From liberal to conservative have already outlined the parameters of a ceasefire and peace. A DMC, a commercial corridor, institutionalized Crimea and Donbass in the possession of Vladimir Putin, unfortunately, which he took those two territories in 2014. No NATO membership for Mr. Zelensky, but a lot of arms so that he can deter Putin, and probably EU membership. If that peace is settled, Donald Trump will soar. Joe Biden allowed that war to break out because he did not arm Ukraine in an offensive way, in the way that Trump had. The Afghanistan pullout lost us deterrence, and then he had a non-strategy, and we had something worse than Stalingrad in World War II. Back home, we are on a renaissance of foreign investment, $4 or $5 trillion. Our tech lords are building huge factories. All that's going to kick in very soon. In addition to that, we're on an energy renaissance. There is no prohibition about ANWR or Keystone. Whatever we want to do in terms of natural gas, nuclear, clean coal, oil production, it's going to happen. And it's going to lower energy prices, and it's going to be very important for Europe. And that's going to change our strategic relationship when we start in full mode supplying them with liquid natural gas and maybe even oil. When we look at the universities, there's going to be a fundamental change in the universities, whether they like it or not. There may be a tax on their endowment. There may be some conditions on student loans, this $1 trillion student loan program that's in shambles. They're going to have to get rid of DEI and trying to avoid the Supreme Court decisions. They've taken so many billions of dollars and not told us about it, and from China, I could go on, but there's going to be fundamental reform of the university that'll be positive. And most importantly and finally, there's about 5 or 6 entities with whom we run the trade deficit that account in aggregate for about 90% of the $1.2 trillion that we are in deficit. And if Donald Trump gets a deal, and I think there's a 50-50 chance in the next month he will, with the EU, with Canada, with Mexico, with the ASEAN or the Southeast Asian nations, with Germany, part of the EU, with South Korea, there's not a lot of them. And once one deal starts to unfold, the others will follow. And because the fundamental economic indicators of job growth, inflation, corporate profits, energy prices are sound, there'll be a little bit of disruption as we reboot with these trade deals, but they're going to do two things. They're going to bring in a lot of foreign investment of these countries that want to avoid another trade war, and they'll find it's, I don't know, useful, and there's efficacy in putting plants in the United States. It's already happening. And more importantly, we will not be sending out 1.2 trillion. What am I getting at? All of the hysteria, I think, is prompted or fueled by, I'll say it, I think it's fueled by fear. I really think they have no alternative to addressing the debt, the budget deficit, the trade deficit, and there's only one pathway. And whether you like Donald Trump or not, or you think he's screwed, he is embracing policies that in bygone days both Democrats and Republicans saw was the solution. And the Democrats are terrified that it is not only the viable solution, but it's going to work.
Isn't it funny, you know, Trump's under all of this pressure and everybody thinks everything has gone to hell, but they don't. It's like we wake up. I think everybody listening is kind of freaked out like I am. It's like, well, I woke up and the Houthis are not controlling the Red Sea. How did that happen? Did he wouldn't have dropped a bunker buster on them, did he? Oh, he did. Oh, he's really taken out their command and control, and they know it. Oh, he's given Israel a blank check to do whatever they want. Oh, they've stopped. The Red Sea is navigable in the Suez Canal. Oh, the border. How'd that happen? There was no comprehensive immigration reform. It shouldn't have happened. Oh, they just deported, what, 700-800 people from Florida. Ooh, they're finding all these criminals. That doesn't make it. It's like, you know, I beat this horse now. I don't mind, but I looked today at the Wall Street Journal. Every single article was negative. You would have never thought that the Wall Street Dow Jones is making a rally the last few days. You would have never thought the economic news on inflation, on job growth, on corporate profits, on affordability, that's all been good. It's just negative. What is the rational? Why? I want to know why. Why are they doing that?
At the end of the 100 days of the Trump administration, let's just review for a moment the opposition to it. And it's actually, if you think about it, a tripartite, a threefold opposition. Pollsters, the media, and the Democratic Party and the institutionalized left. The pollsters have Donald Trump down 4 or 5 points, but when you actually look at the Rasmussen poll or Mark Penn's poll, a Democratic centrist, Trump is almost even. And then when you look with greater clarity at the New York Times poll that has him way down, you see that only 37% of the people polled voted for Donald Trump. But Donald Trump won by almost 1.5 points. Don't you think it should have been, I don't know, 51, 49%? So they were deliberately, in the case of the New York Times, under polling Trump supporters. The same was true with the Washington Post. They polled over 2,000 people, but only 840 were identified as Trump voters. Shouldn't that have been half? So what am I getting at? We're getting right back to what happened in 2016 when the polls were completely wrong. The same thing happened in 2020 when they overestimated Biden's strength by 4 or 5 points. And then even in 2024, the NPR poll had, on the last day of the election, they had Kamala Harris winning by 4 points. The Des Moines Register had Iowa lost to Trump by 3 points. He won it by 12. So what the pollsters are doing, not that Trump hasn't lost some because of the controversy over the trade wars, but the pollsters are trying to create momentum, fundraising, and jazz up opposition. Then we turn to the media. The media is in a fight with the Democratic left now because of the scandal of Joe Biden. The Democratic left is saying, well, you were a journalist. If you thought he was demented or cognitively challenged, why didn't you report it? But the journalists are saying, we couldn't get close to him. He looked okay for us because you had him in such a guarded environment. In truth, they're both guilty. Do you remember those press conferences by Corinne Jean-Pierre? Did anyone ever hear one question on those daily or 3 or 4 times a week press conferences? Miss Jean-Pierre, is Joe Biden cognitively able to navigate himself to the podium? What is the nature of his cue cards? Have you had a Montreal cognitive assessment of him? There was nothing. It was a combination of the Democratic Party, the Biden insider, and the media. And here's another point very quickly. The media has gained a lot of influence and power in the opposition because there is no opposition on the Democratic Party. So in lieu of an alternate agenda, the media has taken it upon themselves to use the only strategy that the Democratic Party can come up with, and that is to attack Donald Trump. Now, what do I mean by that? If you look at the Democratic Party and the left in general, they have boxed themselves in. On the one hand, they have no institutional power, no ability to pass legislation, losing the House and the Senate, no presidency, White House, no executive orders. Ultimately, all of the cherry-picked district and circuit judges will be overturned by a largely conservative Supreme Court. In lieu of actual power, then you look at what is the alternative. Maybe the alternative is a 1994 Newt Gingrich contract with America, an alternate agenda. Yes, we can do better on the border than you can. Yes, we have a better foreign policy with Iran. There's nothing. There's no shadow government. There's not a young Bill Clinton ascendant. There's no young Barack. There's nobody. There's no leaders. There's no agenda. Nothing. It's nihilism. And so let's look at the third element. Do they have a good old days? Can they say Donald Trump ruined things? They were so good under Biden. The border was, we liked it open. 12 million, we could have got 20 million illegal aliens. Let's go back to that. We had a wonderful retreat from Afghanistan. Picture perfect. We can do it again. The Iran, the theater war in Ukraine and Iran, that wasn't our fault. Maybe it was inevitable. We had a really good inflation. We had a little hyperinflation of 9%. So there is no alternative good old days. They can't say Donald Trump wrecked something because they had wrecked the country. So what are we left with? We're left with Donald Trump wore a blue suit at the Vatican funeral. Donald Trump is a fascist. No, according to Governor Pritzker, he's a Nazi. No, according to Al Gore, he is a Nazi. No, according to members of the Congress, is he deserving of polite conversation? You have to use the F word, or maybe it's the SHI word. It's smutty mouth, potty mouth videos. What is the one principle that ties them all together? We're going to talk about that in the next video, but it's about fear that Donald Trump's first 100 days are not as chaotic and bad as they tell us, but we might be on the cusp of something that will be very, very successful and will ensure Donald Trump has a successful presidency.
Once you have any ideology that says the ends justify any mechanism because they're superior to everybody else in an ethical or humanitarian sense, then any method is okay. That's what leftists have always done through history. They're tied at the hip with the left-wing media, the left-wing corporate world, the left-wing foundations, but they don't want that message to get out about what they're really doing with the racial segregation and Chinese communist money and illiberal Middle East money and anti-Semitism and safe spaces, segregated, all that. They don't want that to get out. No First Amendment rights, shouting down speak. It's just a mess. And they think what they're trying to do is say, if you cut the federal subsidy, people are going to die of cancer. Or this super secret weapon we're building and that's all lies. There's money there for scientific research. Every time the state of California cut the CSU system, you know what they would do? They would say, they would keep the La Raza studies, or they'd keep black studies, or they would keep therapeutic studies, and they say, we're going to cut the physics department. We're going to cut German. We're going to cut French. And it was always because all of the things that they wanted to fund, nobody would care if they cut them. But they did care about other things. So that's what they do. Why don't they just say, we're going to have to cut all of the DEI out? There's an article, there's a study, Jack, as I remember, from the Goldwater Institute, and it said the annual cost of DEI on campus, not in the corporate world, not elsewhere, just on campus, was at least $2 billion and 400 million hours of labor.
Gosh.
I was curious about that. I remember it was about a month ago I looked at it, and then the countervailing arguments, well, yes, but there's so much savings and profit because of inclusivity. That's what the left does. DEI, we have all these bureaucrats monitoring and snooping about to look at people's complexions, but that's actually helping us. Speaking of DEI, Jack, just to be off topic, did you see that internal report that the New York Times got its hands on about the tragedy at Reagan Airport in the helicopter?
I did. I listened to Megyn Kelly was talking about it this morning. Yeah, go ahead.
I don't have Alex Berenson was tweeting about it, but it does seem that the female pilot was repeatedly ordered not to stay in the space that she was headed to, not to go there, not to stay there. And for some reason, she didn't follow those orders. And then there were other suggestions that if there was two nodes of culpability, one is the military should never be flying blind with night vision at night in the busiest corridor and the most important corridor in the United States. That's just insane. Anywhere near Reagan Airport. And the people in the chain of command who ordered or adopted that policy should be held responsible. That being said, if there is a suspicion that this was 70 people were killed because of one pilot's error, you'll see what's going to happen. People are going to go back, and maybe because I didn't listen to Megyn today, they're going to investigate the number of hours she had under training, what was her training record, and the question will be, was she put into that very risky position at that risky corridor because of DI or because of her spectacular record as a pilot and lengthy hours of aviation service? I don't have that answer. All these people, isn't it funny how, when I did a video for the Daily Signal on what comes around goes around, and I didn't want to get religious, although I am a Christian, but I said all belief systems have this what comes around goes around, karma, payback's a bitch, that kind of vernacular, nemesis in Greek. And I was talking about Jack Smith and his $140,000 confession that he got free legal services, or Letitia James basically committing much more egregious offenses, but of the same nature that she accused Trump of. Fannie Willis is just a train wreck, and Stacey Abrams, same thing. But Klaus Schwab, my gosh, he was the self-appointed moral censor of the universe. And then, did he stay on I think he's 88. Was he staying on because he knew that it was like musical chairs? As soon as he got up, he would have no place and people would start to, like Biden. What is it with these people, everybody? Why do we only hear about Biden's transgressions? And now we're hearing a little bit more about the Burisma today. There was a story about it. But why do we hear only that he was non compos mentis and maybe demented once he got out of his chair? And the same thing with Klaus Schwab. Surely this was known. So he steps down and all of a sudden it comes out. It shows you the obsequious nature of all the people in the media and around them. It has to stop, because right now the country's being run by about 350 liberal district judges. And they think they get... So what's their motivation? I never heard of any of this Wisconsin. I never know Roseburg. I never knew Judge Frum. They are now nationally known. They're like that Judge Aragon. Remember Aragon that hammed it up in the... that was a Letitia James trial. He just couldn't stop looking at the cameras. Or Judge Ito, remember, in the OJ trial. They're just celebrity creatures. They're fawning. They're like a moth to a light bulb. And the light bulb is Donald Trump. And they just have to fly to him and circle around him and be seen. And it's really disgusting. It really is, that what they've done to the judiciary. And it's really hard. I wrote an article about democratic legality. They all talk about what dictatorial, he doesn't listen to the Supreme. No, you set the precedent. Chuck Schumer, you were the one that yelled and threatened the justices by name. You, Merrick Garland, you were the one that let people swarm the homes, commit felonies, and you didn't even investigate and didn't even prosecute. You were the one that lowered the bar so assassins could show up ready to kill Kavanaugh or Gorsuch. You were the one, Elizabeth Warren, that talked about packing the court. You were the one, Joe Biden, who said that you were going to go around the Supreme Court, ignore it to cancel student loans. So it's just, again, the idea is that their means are justified because their ends are so more moral than the rest of us. Everybody gets, I don't know, they get pretty tired of it. And sanctuary cities is a neo-Confederate idea. It's no different than South Carolina in 1832 saying, you know what? Take your tariffs and smariffs and we're not going to follow them. And Andrew Jackson said, have you read the Constitution? And we're going to have tariffs. They may be protecting Yankees, but we're going to have tariffs. That's what the Congress voted. And I will take troops and I will force you at your ports. I'll shut he did. He was going to invade. And this idea that these individual 600 jurisdictions can say, well, federal law doesn't apply here. And then, but they really don't believe that, Jack, because as I said before, if you were in Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Mississippi, and you said, you know what, our little town has a new law that says you can buy a handgun the day you can walk out with it. No federal gun registration. Or you know what, when you're building your apartment building and there's a 2-spotted-nosed possum and he's on an endangered species list, just smash this SOB, because there is no Endangered Species Act. We don't follow the federal. What would happen to the left when that happened? They'd go berserk. And that's what Harvard should know. I mean, the federal government goes in and tells Bob Jones, rightly so, you want federal money and you want to make it against your policy that people of different races can date each other or marry each other, then don't take federal money. And the same thing applies to Harvard. You want to have your graduations or your dorms predicated on, or your programs predicated on race? Fine. Just don't take federal money.
Everybody should remember what California is. It has no two-party system. It's a one-party state. There's no other state like it in the country. There is not one single statewide officer who is a Republican, not the lieutenant general, not the attorney general, not the state controller, not the governor. I think there's only 11 or 12 of the 52 congressional seats are Republicans. There's a supermajority in the House and the state Senate. We haven't had a Republican governor since Schwarzenegger, and that means that we've had now 8 years of Jerry Brown and 6 years basically of Gavin. So we've had 14 years of judicial appointments. The whole judiciary is basically left-wing at the Superior and Appellate and State Supreme Court. And that's not enough for them. So now they have to silence the majority in the legislature and kick them off committees. And why are they doing this and why now? It's because the state, as I speak, started out with $76 billion in the hole. That's very hard to do, Jack, when you have a 13.3 income tax rate. Your sales tax is among the top 10 in the nation. You have the highest gas tax in the nation. And in addition to that, although in theory you have a 1% property tax, there's all sorts of exemptions, and the assessments are so high with California property. It's among some of the highest property taxes, and they're broke. And then you can't talk about any of these things. People, if you say, why are percent of all the births in California on welfare Medi-Cal? Why? What's going on? Why are 40% of all Californians on Medi-Cal? And why is that program $7 to $8 billion in deficit? And where's the money going to come from? Why do we have the highest power bills in the United States? Why are almost a quarter, 20 to 25% of our power customers are not paying their bill? Why is that? Why do we have 1 out of every 3 people in the United States on public assistance in California? Why are our schools that used to be in the top 10 and the bottom 5 as far as test scores? So if you want to ask those questions, they don't want to discuss it. What's happened, though, why you're getting this paranoia is this was all a scab. What I just described was a putrid wound. And then a series of events tore that scab off. Precipitous was the fires in Los Angeles. And they were unique because that affected primarily upscale left-wing voters in the Malibu, Pacific Palisades area, among the most beautiful area, most affluent, got close to Brentwood even. These were the most left-wing but also affluent people, and they had no one to blame because the mayor was left-wing, the deputy mayor was left-wing, the head of the LA Power and Water was left-wing, the fire chief was left-wing, the deputy fire chief, and they all were in various degrees culpable for this preventable fire that destroyed one of the most beautiful communities in the United States. And now they're looking. Some of them are looking in the mirror, Jack, and they're saying, I did this. I voted for these people. I voted for Karen Bass. I knew what type of person. I voted for the city council that didn't have one Republican on it. I understood that the deputy mayor was calling in bomb threats, allegedly. I know that the water and power woman was incompetent. I know that that reservoir was dry at the top. I know the hydrants, many of them were not working. I know that all the fire department talked about the last 4 years is LGBTQ hiring and DEI. I know that. I know about the winds. I know about the chaparral. I know that they wouldn't let you even remove it. This was all because of human agency of the people that I voted for because I was so affluent and so wealthy and so protected from the consequences of my bankrupt ideology. It always fell on other people. High gas prices? Let those suckers in San Joaquin or Parlier deal with it. High sales taxes? Let that guy in Fresno deal with it. It has no money. Regulations? Let that poor painter in Reedley, California deal with it. But not those people, because they had that utopian open borders, boutique, California Coastal Mission. Oh, the voters voted $7 billion to build 3 big reservoirs to give us 5 million acre feet for the first time in 50 years that would save the state during a drought. Let's just use $250 million of that money and blow up 4 dams, which they did on the Klamath River. That's what this state is about, and they know it now.
If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and share your thoughts in the comments below. Make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss any of our latest content.